I counted the cubicles again this morning. 13. The HR manual sitting on my desk says 12. I've worked at Brennan and Associates for 6 years now, and I never noticed the discrepancy until 3 weeks ago. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Maybe the fluorescent lights are finally getting to me. But Victor saw it too, and he's the most detail-oriented person I know. It started when they hired Elsa. She was assigned to Cubicle 7, which should have been impossible because Margot already sat there. I remember standing by the water cooler, watching our office manager, Klaus, walk Elsa past Margot's desk without even glancing at her. Margot looked up, confused, watching them pass. Then Klaus opened a door I'd never seen before and let Elsa inside. "Did you see that?" Margot whispered to me later. I nodded. We both saw it. The thing is, when I try to count the cubicles now, I always get 13. But if I ask anyone else, they say 12. They look at me like I'm crazy. Victor's the only one who'll admit something's wrong, but even he won't talk about it in the office. Only after hours at the pub down the street. "Don't look at it directly," he told me last night. "I think that's how it notices you." I didn't ask what it meant. I already knew. The office layout makes no sense anymore. I worked here long enough to know the floor plan by heart. 12 cubicles arranged in 2 rows of 6, facing each other. The break room at the east end. Klaus's office at the west. But now there's this extra space, this 13th cubicle, that seems to shift positions depending on when I look. Sometimes it's at the end of the left row. Sometimes it appears between cubicles 4 and 5. Yesterday, I could have sworn it was directly behind my own desk, which is impossible because that's where the wall should be. Elsa sits in there every day. She's pleasant enough, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair always pulled back in a neat bun. She wears the same gray cardigan every single day. When I mentioned this to Victor, he went pale. "You see her too?" he asked. "Of course I see her. She's right there. Anton doesn't see her. Neither does Sophia." I asked them both. I wanted to argue, but I noticed it myself. During the morning meeting, Klaus had gone around the room asking for updates. He called on everyone except Elsa, even though she sat right there in a circle, her hands folded patiently in her lap. She'd raised her hand once. Klaus had looked right through her. I decided to check the employee directory this morning. Simple enough, right? Just look up who's assigned to which cubicle, settle this whole thing. Except when I opened a file, my hands started shaking. The directory listed 12 employees. 12 cubicles. My name was there at cubicle 3. Margot at 7. Victor at 11. But no Elsa anywhere. Looking for something, Klaus appeared behind me, making me jump. No, just checking the seating chart. He smiled that weird, tight smile he's been doing lately. Everything's in order, isn't it? 12 cubicles, 12 employees. Just like always. After he walked away, I noticed he'd left the door to his office open. I'd never been inside before. Nobody had, really. Klaus was particular about his space. But I could see his desk from where I stood, and on it sat a file labeled Employee Concerns, Cubicle Count Discrepancies. It wasn't a thin file. That night, Victor and I met at the pub. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. "I went through the security footage," he said quietly, "from the cameras in the hallway. And the 13th cubicle isn't there. On the footage, the space just doesn't exist." Margot cornered me by the printer around 10:30 in the morning. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair falling loose from its clip. "You need to stop asking questions about the cubicle," she said. "What? Why?" "Because people who ask too many questions end up in there." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard. "My friend Dana used to work here. 3 years ago. She started noticing the same things you're noticing. The extra cubicle. The employee nobody else could see. She went to HR about it. What happened to her?" Margot's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She works in the 13th cubicle now. I can see her sometimes, just for a second. She looks right at me, and her mouth moves like she's screaming, but no sound comes out." I pulled away. "That's insane. You're telling me there's just some ghost office worker. I'm telling you to stop counting. Stop looking. Stop thinking about it." She walked away quickly, almost running. But I couldn't stop. That's the thing about noticing something wrong. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Elsa spoke to me today. Actually spoke to me. I was working late, around 8:45 in the evening. Everyone else had gone home. The overhead lights had switched to their dim nighttime setting, casting long shadows between the cubicles. I heard footsteps behind me and turned around. She stood there in her gray cardigan, smiling pleasantly. "You can see me, can't you?" she asked. My throat went dry. "Yes." "That's unfortunate." She tilted her head, studying me. "Most people can't. It's better that way, I think. Easier." "Who are you?" "I'm Elsa. I work in Cubicle 13. She said it so normally, like she was just another employee. "I've worked here for 7 years now. Or maybe it's been longer. Time feels different in here." "In where?" "In the space between." She walked closer. "You're starting to slip into it too. I can tell. Victor as well. Maybe Margot, though she's fighting it harder than you are." "I don't understand." Elsa smiled sadly. "You will. Once you're here long enough, you start to understand how it works. The office isn't just 12 cubicles. It's never been just 12 cubicles." Then she walked back to the 13th cubicle and sat down at her desk, and I couldn't make myself follow her. Victor didn't come to work the next day. I called him around 9:15 in the morning, but he didn't answer. I tried again at lunch. Nothing. Sophia noticed me trying to reach him. "Looking for Victor?" she asked. "Yeah, he didn't show up today." She frowned. "Who's Victor?" I stared at her. "Victor. Victor Petrov. He sits in cubicle 11. Right there." I pointed. She looked where I was pointing, and I saw cubicle 11 was empty. Not just empty like Victor had called in sick. Empty like nobody had ever worked there. The desk was bare, no computer, no personal items, nothing. "That cubicle's been vacant for months," Sophia said. "Are you feeling okay?" I checked the employee directory again. Victor's name was gone. Just gone, like it had never been there. 11 names now instead of 12. That's when I realized what was happening. The office wasn't gaining a cubicle. We were losing people. I found Margot in the break room. "Victor's gone," I said. She didn't look surprised, just sad. "I told you to stop asking questions. How long before they forget about me? I don't know." Dana disappeared and everyone forgot her within a week. "But you've been here 6 years. Maybe that buys you more time. Or maybe it makes it worse." She squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry." Klaus called me into his office at 2:30 in the afternoon. I've been dreading this moment since I noticed Victor's name had vanished from the directory. "Close the door, please," he said. His office was strange. Not strange like the 13th cubicle, but strange in its absolute normality. Beige walls, filing cabinets, a desk calendar showing the correct date. Everything perfectly ordinary, which somehow made it worse. "I've been reviewing some concerns," Klaus said, opening that thick file I'd seen before. "It seems you've been experiencing some confusion about our office layout." "I'm not confused. There are 13 cubicles. There are 12. Then who's Elsa?" Klaus's expression didn't change. "We don't have an employee named Elsa. She sits right there, every day. In the cubicle, that shouldn't exist." He leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I think is happening. You're experiencing a perception issue. It happens sometimes to certain employees. You start seeing things that aren't there, counting things that don't add up. It's a sign you're becoming eligible. Eligible for what? Reassignment." He smiled that tight smile again. "Some employees are better suited for the auxiliary workspace. We'll be moving you there, effective Monday. The 13th cubicle." "There is no 13th cubicle," he said firmly. "Just as there was never a Victor. Just as there won't be a you once the paperwork processes." I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I stayed in the office, hiding in the storage room after everyone left. I needed to understand what was happening before Monday came. Around 11:20 at night, I heard voices. I cracked open the storage room door and saw them. Elsa wasn't alone. There were others in the 13th cubicle, maybe 4 or 5 people I didn't recognize, all sitting at desks that shouldn't exist in a space that shouldn't be there. But there was also someone I did recognize. Victor. He sat at a desk, typing on a computer, his face blank and expressionless. And there, in the corner, was a woman who looked exactly like the photo Margot had shown me once. Dana. They were all there, all the employees who'd been forgotten. Working in an office that existed in the same space as ours but somehow separate, like a copy overlaid imperfectly on the original. Margot appeared beside me. I hadn't heard her come in. I couldn't let you face this alone, she whispered. I've been researching. The building has a history. There was a fire here in 1993. 12 people died, trapped in their cubicles. 13. I corrected automatically. She nodded slowly. 13. But the official report only listed 12 victims. They couldn't find the 13th body. They couldn't even find evidence that a 13th person had worked here. We broke into Klaus's office at midnight. I know that sounds reckless, but we were past the point of caring about consequences. If I was going to disappear anyway, I needed to understand why. The filing cabinets were locked, but Margot had learned to pick locks in college. Don't ask. She worked quickly, her hands steady despite the fear I could see in her eyes. Here, she said, pulling out an old leather folder. Building schematics from 1991. We spread the pages across Klaus's desk. The original floor plan showed 13 cubicles, but someone had drawn over it, crossing out the 13th position, writing sealed in red ink. Beneath that was a note in handwriting I recognized as Klaus's. Space remains active. Requires feeding. Feeding. Margot's voice shook. I flipped through more documents. Employee transfers dating back decades. Every few months, someone new got reassigned to auxiliary workspace. Every single one had started asking questions about the office layout first. There was a psychological evaluation form, too. My name was already filled in at the top, dated for next Monday. Under recommendation, it said, employee shows persistent perception of auxiliary space. Suitable for permanent reassignment. They're not firing us, I said. They're feeding us to whatever's in that cubicle. Margot grabbed my arm. We need to leave. Right now. Quit, find new jobs, get out of this building. But before we could move, the lights flickered. When they came back on, Klaus stood in the doorway. I really wish you hadn't done that, Klaus said calmly. He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. The lock clicked automatically. What is this place? I demanded. What happened to those 12 people in the fire? 13 people, Klaus corrected. That's the important part. The official investigation only found 12 bodies because the 13th one never died. Not exactly. It just stayed, existing in a space between what is and what was. Margot backed toward the window. You're insane. I'm a building manager. This is my job. Brennan and Associates has operated successfully for 34 years because we maintain the balance. The 13th cubicle exists because something needs to exist there. And that something needs to be fed. Fed what? I asked, though I already knew. Employees who can perceive it. People like you who start counting wrong, seeing too much. Once you notice the auxiliary space, you're already halfway there. The boundary weakens. By Monday, you'll slip right through, and the office will have its 12 cubicles again. Everything balanced. Everything normal. He pulled out his phone, checking something. Although, now that Ms. Margot has involved herself, we'll need to adjust the schedule. 2 reassignments this week instead of 1. Margot threw a stapler at him. He dodged easily. Running won't help, he said. You already belong to the space. You've seen too much. We're in anyway. What else could we do? I grabbed Margot's hand and we bolted from Klaus's office, racing between the cubicles toward the main exit. Behind us, Klaus followed at a walking pace. He didn't need to run. He knew something we were only beginning to understand. The office had changed. The layout shifted around us, cubicles rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces. I tried to head toward the exit, but the path kept changing. Right turns led back to where we started. Straight lines curved impossibly. It's not letting us leave, Margot gasped. I saw Elsa standing by the water cooler. She looked sad but unsurprised. You should have left when you had the chance, she called out. Before midnight. That's when a boundary solidifies. Now you're stuck here until Monday when the transfer completes. There has to be a way out, I said. Elsa shook her head. I thought that too. I fought for 3 days straight. But the building always wins. It's patient. It's hungry. And it's been here a lot longer than any of us. Victor appeared beside her. He looked at me with empty eyes. It's not so bad once you accept it, he said in a monotone voice. You just work. Forever. The time doesn't pass the same way here. Margot grabbed my shoulder. The fire. The original fire. If 13 people got trapped, maybe that's the key. Maybe we need to understand what happened that night. We found the old incident reports in a cabinet by the break room. I don't know why they kept physical copies, but I was grateful they did. Margot spread them across a desk while I kept watch for Klaus. The fire started at 7:45 p.m., she read. Electrical malfunction in cubicle 13. It spread quickly. Emergency exits malfunctioned. 12 employees died of smoke inhalation, but there were 13 people, I said. She flipped through pages. Here, witness statement from a survivor who was in the bathroom when the fire started. She says she counted 13 people still inside when she ran out. But at the hospital, she changed her story. Said she must have miscounted. Klaus made her change it. Not Klaus. He's only been manager for 10 years. She showed me another document. But there's been a building manager position continuously since the fire. Always someone maintaining the balance. Always someone making sure people forget about the 13th cubicle. I found a photo attached to one of the reports. It showed the office after the fire. 12 burned cubicles, clearly visible. But in the background, in a corner that the camera barely caught, there was a 13th space. And standing in it, blurry but unmistakable, was a figure. That's Elsa, Margot whispered. We both looked up. Elsa stood across the room, watching us with those sad eyes. I was the 13th, she said quietly. I didn't die in the fire. I got trapped between. And I've been here ever since, watching the office fill and empty, fill and empty. Employees come, employees go. But I stay. Always. How do we stop this? I asked Elsa. She smiled, but it was bitter. You can't. The only way to break the cycle is to close the 13th cubicle permanently. But that would require acknowledging it exists. Getting 12 people to see it, to count it, to confirm it. And Klaus has spent decades making sure that never happens. Margot's eyes lit up. But we can see it. That's 3 of us right there. We just need 9 more. 9 more people to notice, Elsa said. 9 more people to question reality hard enough that the boundary weakens for them too. You think Klaus will allow that? As if summoned by his name, Klaus appeared. But this time he wasn't alone. Sophia, Anton, and the other employees stood behind him, their faces blank. It's almost 4:30 in the morning, Klaus said. Monday will be here soon. I think it's time you both stopped resisting and accepted your new positions. The other employees moved forward, surrounding us. Their eyes were empty, mechanical. They grabbed our arms with surprising strength. They're already halfway gone, Elsa explained. They can't see the 13th cubicle, but the building owns them anyway. They do what it needs without ever questioning why. We fought, but there were too many. They dragged us toward the 13th cubicle, toward that impossible space that existed in the corner of perception. And Elsa just stood there watching, that sad smile never leaving her face. They put me in a desk next to Victor. Margot was 3 seats away, still struggling even though the other employees had already let go and returned to their regular cubicles. In here, in this 13th space, everything felt muffled. Sounds came from far away. Colors seemed washed out. You'll adjust, Victor said. His voice was flat, emotionless. After the first few days, you stopped noticing the difference. But I noticed. I noticed everything. The way time moved strangely, hours passing in minutes, or minutes stretching into hours. The way the other employees in the regular cubicles walked past without seeing us, even when we stood right in front of them. Klaus appeared in the doorway between spaces. Welcome to your new permanent assignment. You'll find your workload is consistent. The building appreciates consistent workers. What is this place really? I asked. Exactly what it appears to be. An office. A very old office that exists slightly outside normal space, slightly outside normal time. The fire didn't destroy Cubicle 13. It transformed it. And now it sustains itself by pulling in people who get too close to understanding. Margot stood up suddenly. No, I won't accept this. You don't have a choice, Klaus said. But Margot did something I hadn't thought possible. She started screaming. Not words, just pure sound, raw and desperate and so very human. And maybe because we were in that space between, maybe because the boundary was thinner, her scream carried. In the regular office, people stopped working. They looked up, confused, looking for the source of the sound, looking at the 13th cubicle. I don't know how many heard Margot's scream that morning. Maybe 5, maybe 8, but it was enough. Enough people turned to look directly at cubicle 13. Enough people counted wrong for just a moment that the boundary cracked. Klaus tried to stop it, but even building managers have limits. When enough people perceive the same impossible thing simultaneously, reality has to adjust. The 13th cubicle became visible to everyone. Solid. Undeniable. The other employees stood in shock, seeing Elsa and Victor and Dana and dozens of others they've forgotten. Seeing me and Margot trapped in that space between. Call the police, someone shouted. Call someone. What the hell is this? Klaus vanished. Just disappeared like he'd never been there. The building shuddered, the lights flickering wildly. I felt the pull of the 13th cubicle weakening, the boundary dissolving. Margot grabbed my hand. Run. Now. We ran. Out of the 13th cubicle, through the regular office, toward the exit that finally stayed in one place. Behind us, I heard Elsa calling out, her voice finally able to reach across that barrier. Thank you. I got a new job 3 months ago. Margot did too. We don't work in offices anymore if we can help it. But sometimes late at night, I count the rooms in my apartment. I count them over and over, making sure the number stays the same. Because I know what happens when you start counting wrong. When spaces exist that shouldn't. When the boundary between what is and what was gets thin enough to slip through. I know what happens. And I'm still watching. Still counting. Still checking. Just in case.